Hey Sunshines, welcome back to another episode here on my channel, The Love Collective, with your host, Leandra Yamilet, and today I have my friend here, Carlos Tejada. So today we're going to be talking about the topic of love and intimacy and how we both feel that we're moving forward in our personal lives. So one of the few things that I've learned this week is that there's a study done in Cornell University by a doctor called Robert Sternberg, and he came up with a theory that in order for you to be in romantic love, you need three aspects, and that is the aspect of intimacy, passion, which is like physical and emotional, and then the third one, which is commitment, or the decision to wanting to be with that person. And I think like what I've learned so far is that I'm kind of more of the two first ones, meaning more passion and more intimacy rather than the commitment part. And you know, obviously like there's like a root to that, but right. That's kind of where I'm at today at 24. And so you're 20 years old, and I want you to just talk a little bit about your perspective and how you have moved through those spaces. And if you feel that you need to have all three to be like in an authentic and real relationship.
Right. I definitely think it's like a case by case basis and just like who you are. Because I know for me, like, commitment means a lot to me just because like knowing that a person, like, we made that verbal agreement of like yeah, like we're gonna be like together, or like yeah, we're gonna be best friends, like this and that, like that's something that is important to me just because I need that, like, that verbal contract,
right.
You know, of like, okay, like now I need to know that there's different responsibilities, you know what I mean? Like it's different from like a classmate to like a friend to like a boyfriend and stuff like that.
Yeah, like there's levels to love, right? And I think like one of the first things that I had to learn to distinguish was what love means to me in each of these spaces, right? Meaning like platonic love and then romantic love. I'll give you an example. Like for me, I've always thought that for me to be intimate with a person, that meant sex. It didn't necessarily have to be, you know, like the language or the conversations that we were holding. And you know, like I'm sure we have all been like in that state, right? But for me, it definitely has been a journey of like learning who I am and like what I require when I am sharing my time with a person, because we do become who we hang out with.
In terms of talking about like relationships and like how I personally find like the type of person that I want, or like the significant other, like emotional intelligence taps into that too, just because like that's something that I really appreciate and just crave in general, you know what I mean? And on top of that, like that coupled with the intimacy, like the passion, right? Like the physical, like it just makes it so much better, just because you understand that both of you are on that emotional intelligence and like on that same level too.
Yeah, you know what? I think like you mentioned something that is so spectacular, and that is emotional intelligence. And one of the first things that I've learned is that just because you're like a certain age doesn't mean that you hold it.
Right.
And I say that because, you know, I'm 24 and you're 20, right? And I mean, you have more emotional intelligence, and like I'm that serious, and like half of the men that I've dated.
Right.
You know, and that's honestly like that's really real for me, right? And I always thought that, oh, like I can kind of sacrifice, because at the end of the day, it's a sacrifice. Like it's because it doesn't feel comfortable.
Right.
And that's why I find it a sacrifice, where I had to like surrender part of my mind just so I can meet them at the state that they were in.
Right.
And then I think even with the last relationship that I had, it wasn't even a relationship. It was supposed to be a hookup, y'all. But then it's weird. No, it was weird because I guess like this guy wanted certain things from me that he couldn't give to me either. But he wanted me to be this person for him, because obviously like I could, and he saw that I could, but it wasn't reciprocated. And I think like that's what I want to get to. So for me, like right now, right, between 24 and 25 is finding like that balance of what does love mean to me, and what does like romantic love, and even what does intimacy mean to me. And like emotional intelligence, oh my God, has so much to do with intimacy, because that is how you connect at the end of the day.
Important quote that came from like one of my favorite movies, Perks of Being a Wallflower, is that we accept the love we think we deserve.
Right. Oh.
And like that, when I first saw that movie, that hit. You know, like
I cried.
Literally, because it's just like, it's true. Everyone accepts the love that we deserve. That's why the stereotypical like really pretty smart girl is gonna be with the bad boy of the like high school or whatever, because like what we've seen, our experiences, we don't think that we deserve better.
And think about what you deserve in general. Like if you're in a relationship where somebody's treating you bad, it's generally because you're accepting that treatment. It's not because the person just wants to give it to you. Because at any moment, like we have all the power to get up, pack our bags, and leave.
Exactly.
As painful as it is and as uncomfortable as it is, the reward in you know, like the length of time is going to be greater than like if you just stay in this like really obnoxious, very sickening, toxic sort of relationship. That's hilarious. But we were having a conversation like earlier about how you had felt even like in a platonic relationship and how you have to like maneuver your spaces like within that.
Exactly.
So then what is like the major difference that you can say between being intimate like in a platonic relationship and then being intimate in a romantic relationship?
In a certain way, there's attributes of it that are similar, just because there you still have to tap into that like how we were talking, like deep listening and comprehension.
Right.
Because in both parties and both like sections, like we have to like be able to understand each other and where we're coming from. On top of that, like when choosing like a platonic relationship or a romantic relationship, we have to like really like know ourselves. Like I'm a big person
That's a good point.
Right,
yeah.
And I'm a big person that states like you shouldn't get into a committed relationship if you don't know who you are, or at least know what you want.
It'll be painful. It's going to be painful, but you'll get to know yourself.
You get to know yourself through it as well.
Yeah.
But I'm just like for me, like before my relationship now, like I was single for like 4 years, and like that's why I'm just like, you know, like I was single for like 4 years.
Damn,
and
no
like,
excuses, y'all. No excuses.
And through that, like, yeah, like I was like going through like first, second dates and like hooking up and stuff, but like that was a way of me like trying to figure out what I want and what I like.
Right.
And I never went into a committed long-term relationship until like I knew what I wanted, you know.
I think like that's very deep, right? You're touching into like the wanted, like the desire, right? Because I think like that's also one of the biggest components when it comes to finding love. And you know, for me, like being Dominican and Puerto Rican and being raised in a multicultural, very Caribbean Hispanic family.
That's a whole layer.
The
whole.
We share that though, right?
Right,
so like you understand like the complexities of like being inside of these spaces and having parents that like they accept you, but they don't really care for understanding to like a certain extent, or at least like in my family, right? We're like, yeah, we hear you, we accept you, but it's more about, okay, now let me educate you so you don't use the wrong pronouns, or you don't use, you know, like the wrong language around certain, you know, people, right, that identify a certain way.
Right. Yeah.
So can you tell me a little more about like your own journey? Like where do you feel that you are? Like what's the process?
Yeah, so definitely bouncing off the whole like cultural thing, like me being like identified as like a bisexual man, and like besides like my sexuality, just like the race factor within like Dominican Puerto Rican culture, like colorism, right. Because like my family would be more accepting of me, like presenting them a lighter skin Latina than a darker skin Latina. That's such
a good point.
And that's just like in just like straight relationships. So like imagínate like gay relationships. You know what I mean? Like so it's just like there's so many things that we have to navigate just because like Caribbean culture is very like one-way street.
It can be, very boxed in, you know?
Yeah. So there's that, and then like also where I'm at now is like I'm in a gay relationship, gang. But I feel like one thing that I've learned throughout like learning about myself like sexually and like romantically and everything is that like all the relationships that I went through, the best relationships were with like queer people. And that's something I've learned, like my best relationships were just with trans women, trans men, queer men.
What do you think?
And I just think I feel like there is this level of understanding and empathy that we see each other in. I went on a few dates with a trans man, and the first thing that they gave me was like a bouquet of flowers.
So beautiful.
Like no other like straight girl ever did that. Because you know, stereotypes like, oh, the guy has to give the flowers, you know?
Yeah, like it's all tradition, right?
Right. So like, and then also like where I'm at right now, like with my boyfriend, like there's a level of empathy that he exhibits that so many other straight relationships never do, you know, like didn't exhibit there. So just in my own personal life, like I've experienced like maximum amount of happiness with like queer relationships, which I found really interesting.
Yeah. You know what, for me, since like we're touching into like all these like different dynamics, I've dated, I feel like all I've dated for like the last couple of years are like hypermasculine men. And I don't know if like some of you guys have dated a hypermasculine man, but that is usually a like machista, which is like a macho man, right? And so they think power from a very different perspective than you and I, you know, think of power. And for me, power is being vulnerable. Power is being, you know, open, right? Open-minded, being able to understand and then like empathize or sympathize with the person, not being, again, like inside of a box, right? And thinking like this is the way that things are, because not everything is what it seems, right? And so for me, like going from a hyper masculine sort of space into coming into understanding what masculinity really is has been one of the biggest eye-opening moments that I've experienced in literally 2020, outside from like the pandemic. Right. Understanding like masculinity, right? And like you have been one of the persons, honestly, that have taught me that, right? Like through your vulnerability, through your openness, through saying, this is who I am, you know, and there's room for me to learn, because at the end of the day, a man is a person that is open and that truly understands the nature of the different levels of nature to things, right? Because women, we're not just one thing. We don't just operate a certain way. Like we're vulnerable, right? And you have the capacity to also be vulnerable. But based on like these social norms, we live through different rules. And I am aware of that. Right. So with that being said, how do you balance the rules that you have to live with your family, the social norms of like being, you know, like an Afro-Latino man, and then just you wanting to be yourself?
Literally, it's a whole mess.
Like, oh, it's a lot, but you feel it.
And it's the thing too that I think in terms of finding or reaching a point where we're gonna see a lot of acceptance, it's gonna take a lot of time, just because this mentality is intergenerational.
Yeah,
and like
good point.
There's a lot of microaggressions that exist within Caribbean culture that parents and uncles and aunts just say like, if it's nothing, like, because it doesn't, you know, they're not aware that it's like offensive or like not right. So like, for example, like growing up, like my uncles would look at my hands and they'll be like, oh, your hands are too soft, like you should be like, you have girl hands. I've
heard that before.
And it's rooted in the fact that all of my uncles are landscapers, construction workers. So it's like, for them, a man is doing the heavy work, like doing the lifting, making sure like your hands have like calluses and everything, because that shows that you're a man. So like seeing that on top of like a bunch of other microaggressions, like navigating that is very difficult, because no one, like I didn't even know that the word microaggression was a thing growing up. You know what I mean? Like I learned that in college. I learned that now. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what microaggression was, but that's something that exists within like specifically like Dominican culture, you know, like that on top of colorism.
Yeah.
And I feel like navigating that in my life, it just took a lot of just my own personal research, and then also
that willingness.
Right, that willingness. And I also make the effort to surround myself with different people and different perspectives, because that's something that can help you get out of your own bubble, because everyone is born in their own bubble. That's
a really good point, right? Yeah. You are the equivalent of the 5 people that you hang out with the most.
Exactly.
So if you want to grow, expand your circle, expand your network.
Literally.
Thank you for being here today. I think that the best thing that I've learned from you is, you know, like the mindfulness behind all of this thinking, right? And understanding that there's no straight path into like doing this thing, right? That whichever way you go, you're never wrong. It's more about choosing to take whatever experience comes at you as a lesson and learning from it, rather than getting upset, you know, and like not dealing with the pain that it's going to cost you in the process. So with that being said, is there anything else that you would like to leave our community with?
Yeah, definitely focus on emotional intelligence and that type of emotional intimacy, because that makes the physical a lot better. 100%.
No, like, it does.
Trust and believe, you know.
Share with your friends, because I think this is a conversation that we all need to have with our families, with our friends, with each other. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. I'll see you on another episode here at The Love Collective. Bye. Bye.